I'm arriving here super hungover, which feels very strange to arrive to a monastery in this kind of state. Fuck this shit! It's so painful. I don't want to do this annoying work. I was so scared. You don't need a plan. You just go and, the path will unfold. And then there was a boy. Hi, welcome back to the 𝗪𝘀𝗀𝗀 podcast, episode number 2. This is the continuation of the last episode, which was the pre-story. And today I will share a love story with you. The love story of falling in love with nature and, wilder ways of living. And before I go into any talking, I invite us, like always, for an embodiment practice. This time a meditation of interbeing. So if you'd like to join me, then I invite you to close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you. And find a comfortable seated position. For the beginning, just take a moment to sense your breath. Sensing the movement of expansion and contraction. Sensing the weight of your body against the ground or the chair, the surface wherever you're sitting. And from here, I invite you to slowly, gently open your eyes and have a look around your room, the space you're in. Keeping your eyes relaxed, letting your gaze slowly wander. See if you can detect any wood around you. And see if you can detect any plants around you. And see where water lives in your space. Imagining the pipes in the building, connecting with where that water comes from, where it goes to. And thinking of soil, of earth, maybe sand. Where does that live in your space? Maybe in the walls of your building. Taking a moment to connect with that. From here, maybe you want to close your eyes again as we bring the focus to ourselves, closer to ourselves. Maybe also here you can detect that you're wearing plants. Maybe cotton fibers that are covering your skin. Maybe there's a pen around that used to be a tree. acknowledging that water lives inside of you. That we're made of water. And for a moment, following your breath into your nose, down your lungs, breathing in oxygen, breathing in life, and sensing how your surrounding becomes part of you, lives inside of you. Breathing out again, giving back. And for a moment, I invite you to bathe in this awareness that we are connected with everything, every element around us, that we are, that we're never alone, always held, always in motion, in a dance of giving and receiving. And to close the practice, I invite you to take a deep inhalation through the nose and exhale through the mouth. And if they come up any intuitive movement, intuitive impulses of movement, I invite you to follow that. Maybe some stretching, maybe some rolling shoulders, maybe some sighing, yawning. Everything is welcome. Make yourself comfortable. So, episode number 2. And before I start with the story, the love story, I would like to share a few admin things around this, because maybe you've noticed English is not my mother tongue. And sometimes I don't find the words and I can't be bothered to think about it too long, so I will just blurb them out in German. And my gorgeous editor, 𝗪𝗁𝗁, hi, she will blend in the words, the English words for you, so we're all on the same page about what we're talking here. And yeah, whenever you hear a sound of something plopping, then we're also showing images with the story. And yeah, 𝗪𝗁𝗁 also has a YouTube channel sharing tips about women traveling alone, so I recommend you to check that out as well. I will link that in the description box, and I also will share all the resources, the places I'm talking about in today's episode in the description box. So yeah, so people can check out the places I'm talking about. Yeah, and that's it. So let's get into the episode. Episode number 1 ended after the crazy wild hitchhiking trip to France, and then coming back to my life in Berlin, where I had my studies, had a job, and it was a phase of sensing that my old life didn't fit anymore, but the new life, the new path was unknown. So that was quite a challenging and uncomfortable time. Maybe some of you can relate to these in-between phases that are just chaotic and full of questions and things don't feel right. And for me, that led to moving out from my partner. So we moved together right after I moved out from my parents' house. Then we shared a living space for 4 years. And after that journey, I was just noticing that I needed my own space. And I was on this journey of self-discovery, and I felt just too influenced by being around my partner all the time. And I moved into a shared flat with 3 guys, and it was also not the best fit for that time. It was really like balancing contrast. So there was me going to yoga more often and sensing that I want to become sober and not go partying all the time anymore. And then I had 3 guys living with me who exactly did that. So it was quite challenging. It was a time of like practicing saying no and drawing my boundaries and following my intuition. And then, there was this addictive pull of giving in, and it was kind of a wrestling for quite a while. But this call of nature got stronger and stronger, and it was really like I had this voice in my head calling me to nature, into nature. And I guess this hitchhiking trip planted the idea that France would be a good space, because I just fell in love with nature there. And I also did a student exchange in school to France, so it always felt a bit familiar already. So I started checking out options of how can I follow this call, like this city life, it doesn't feel right anymore. How can I make this happen? And I remember at the beginning I was checking out the option of freiwillig ökologisches Jahr. I can't even say it in German. It's basically an official program from the government. Maybe it's even Europe-wide. I don't know. I will drop you the link in the description box. That's basically a program that offers people the possibility to work in ecological places, on farms, and so on, and you receive funding for that. And that's 1 year. But I struggle with official structures and paperwork, and I already understood by now slowly, it took me quite a while, but that I don't function well in these structures and frameworks. So I discovered woofing. So that's short for Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farming. And this is like a volunteer program where every person or association who works in the field around organic farming can offer a work exchange. And so I found that, and because I had savings and I had a super strong impulse of I have to get out of Berlin, I subletted my room of that shared flat that I just moved into and planned this journey to France. I ended up with 3 spots that I picked out. Initially, it was just 2. The first one was a family close to Paris who renovated an old mill, and the second one was another roofing space in the south of France, in the Pyrenees. And one of my roommates back then practiced Buddhism, and I had no idea of Buddhism. I had no encounters with that practice at all at this point, but he kept talking about, do you know Thich Nhat Hanh, and do you know Plum Village? And I didn't, and I was also, I wouldn't say skeptical, but I didn't know why I should go there. It was not something that called me, but he kept talking about it, and he kept insisting about it, actually. Like, I think this is a good place for you to go. I think you should go there. So he just planted this voice in my head. And so when I sat in the train already, I checked out the website of Plum Village and found a retreat with the title Community Living and Sustainable Farming. And then I was like, oh, wow, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And that feels so resonant. And so, I signed up to go 1 week to Plum Village as well. And because I had learned how to hitchhike, I did that on this journey as well, this time alone. And I was pretty nervous at the beginning and excited, but it turned out to be a very good decision. Again, I just met so many lovely people, and the thing of doing it alone was so empowering. It felt so good to do that. I arrived at my first station, which was a family close to Paris in the north of France. And they had renovated, or were still in the process of renovating, an old mill together with an association, so a group of people. And yeah, their description just sounded so lovely, of how they spoke about their connection to nature, their relationship to nature, and what they would like to offer the people who come volunteer there. And it was, yeah, close to reach from where I lived. So arriving there just felt so warm and exciting. So it was this pretty wild, still piece of land, and this super old building, super rough but beautiful French country home. And I feel like the family was kind of like a French picture book family. The mother was a dancer from Paris, and the father was an actor at this theater, a performer. So now they were just living and working on the land there and doing different jobs. It was just so lively and vivid and joyful and enjoying life and food. So it felt really lovely arriving there. It was also a challenge because I slept in the barn, in one of the barns. So it was a pretty rough environment. And it was spring, so it got pretty cold in the nights. And I just remember the first nights, I was so scared. I was so scared because I was alone and cold and wrapped up in my sleeping bag, and there were these horrible noises, like screams, and I was so scared. I didn't know what it was. I now know that it was like deer calls, deer noises that apparently can sound pretty terrifying. And I remember just like listening to my mantra on repeat all night to like calm me down. But whenever it was day, it was very beautiful. And yeah, I just remember the mother taking me into the garden for the first time, and she had just this beautiful way of talking about plants and the relationship with plants, how to care for them, how to listen. So that felt so beautiful just to hear these words, because up until then in my life I didn't have any encounter with this idea of this intimate relationship with nature and plants. So that felt really like coming home already. And she showed me the garden, and everything was in organic shapes, so there was not like straight lines, and everything looked pretty wild. And she just explained me a lot of the permaculture principles. And there was this one moment when I dug my hands into the soil, and the trees, the leaves were rustling around me. I remember this feeling so vividly, of just my body feeling like this is it. This is how one should feel. This is home. And I was like so in awe, I think, that I could feel this sense of calm, this sense of serenity and presence and belonging without any effort. Apart from these super beautiful moments of arrival, there were also other moments, because I obviously had no clue what I was doing in the garden, of how to use tools and do this hard physical work. I know that I got the task to remove like huge thistles and nettles and brambles one day. And I just got these outbursts of rage and just like, fuck this shit. It's so painful. I don't want to do this annoying work. So yeah, it was all of it. It was all of it. So this whole stay at that family's place was just so nourishing. Yeah, and the first glimpse of how it could look like living close to nature, in reciprocity with nature. After these 2 weeks at the family, the next station was Plum Village, the Buddhist monastery. And I don't know how this came to be. I guess at this point I was just still attracting like trouble and chaos and this kind of people who who move in these kind of realms. So I got recommended a friend's place in Nantes, and I hitchhiked there to just have an in-between station from the Moulin to Plum Village. And I arrived there, and that was just another, for me, unexpected party night that totally escalated. And one of the girls, she ended up in hospital with a broken arm. So it was like really one of these nights. And I just remember passing one super hungover day in Nantes, which is a really beautiful city, by the way. I enjoyed hanging out there. And then I hitchhiked the next day towards Plum Village. And I remember I was just so tired and exhausted and hungover still. But I found this super lovely trucker, or more, he found me. He picked me up at the side of the road. And he'd never taken a hitchhiker in his whole life, he said to me. And I don't know, he was just really chill and nice, and I just fell asleep. It was the first time of me sitting in a truck, and it's so comfortable. It's like sitting in the living room on a couch. And yeah, he was really kind and chill, so I felt comfortable enough to sleep, I guess. Arriving at the parking of Plum Village was quite a surprise for me to notice that there were people from all over the world. So really from the States, from South Korea, from Argentina, from France itself, from the Netherlands, from everywhere. And I didn't expect that. So I was really like, wow, okay, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. I'm arriving here super hungover, which feels very strange to arrive to a monastery in this kind of state. But everyone was super nice, and luckily I was in a double bedroom, I think, or even more beds, but in the end I was the only person staying in this room, and I was very grateful for that, because that week turned out to be a lot. But after this first moment of overwhelm or surprise, it quickly shifted into a state of just awe, like just sensing the atmosphere and the energy of that place and seeing all the monks and nuns. They weren't even walking, they were like hovering over the place. They had like such a peaceful aura around them that just being in that place already touched me on such deep levels. And it was this constant shifting again from feeling my insecurities, my limitations, being in deep emotional processes, to feeling so at home and being held, and remembering that this also can be life. And some things were really strange, like eating in silence with strangers at the beginning, and all you hear is like the eating noises and all the cutlery. And I didn't like that. I was like, oh my God, this is so strange and uncomfortable. So I was mainly eating alone. The meditations took place, I think, if I remember correctly, around 5:30 in the morning. which was way too early for me at that time. And I remember falling asleep in these meditations, and I think they were like 45 minutes, so quite long. And I knew meditation from yoga, but I think I never meditated longer than like 10-15 minutes. And doing it that early in the morning, I was just trying really hard to stay awake, and I failed several times. And I think I also sometimes skipped the morning meditation because I didn't make it out of bed. Something I was surprised of also was how intimate the retreat got to be in the end, that people were sharing their stories, their trauma, and speaking very openly from the heart. And back then I wasn't used to that. I had never experienced people sharing so vulnerably, so honestly about the worst things that had happened to them, and I was quite overwhelmed with that. I knew I didn't share anything. I was just listening, but just listening and experiencing this, on one side, beauty of those people being held by the community, by the monks and nuns, but then also, this fear of, oh my God, this is too much for me. This is too intense, too much. I don't want to share. And I remember also after meditations, or we did all kinds of meditations and listened to talks, I would just get these outbursts of tears and grief, and I would just sob, and sometimes I didn't even know why. And then sometimes I understood it's about this grief of realizing how many masks I had to acquire throughout my life, how I made myself fit into boxes that I really didn't fit into, and but also feeling for the first time how insecure and shy and socially awkward I was without alcohol and drugs around people, because this was really one of the first encounters or retreats for me where I was interacting on such a vulnerable level with so many people sober. So it was a lot. And since the retreat was called Community Living and Sustainable Farming, we also had one day where we worked on the farm of the monastery, and that was such a incredible experience, because I was coming from this 2 weeks with the family and having no clue what I was doing and getting these outbursts of anger, and then arriving at this farm of the monastery and just seeing how the monks and the nuns related with the plants and how they were working, and this concept of interbeing that I introduced to do in the meditation in the beginning. This comes from Thich Nhat Hanh. So they really live with this knowing of we are all connected, and this care for all the beings and the plants and the minerals. So it was a very different way of working with plants. They also have the mindfulness bell that rings every, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes or so, that reminds you to become present again, to come into your body, to return to the present moment and what you're doing in this moment, with an invitation to enjoy whatever you're doing. That was really, a life-changing concept, and I was lucky to discover it there because it just had a big impact on the rest of my journey and how I relate with nature now. And then there was this one walking meditation, and I remember doing it barefoot. It was so touching and liberating. It was really this coming home into your senses, feeling the soles of your feet on the earth, feeling every pebble, being so open to the bird songs around you. And yeah, it was really so beautiful discovering this and this like sensory awakening in a way. I feel like this week of being there and being sober with this much intimate practices and encounters, it really cracked me open to all these to new ways of relating and sensing, and that was a big gift. And then there was a boy who had followed me in the walking meditation and who also walked barefoot, and he started talking to me afterwards and we connected, and I felt really shy and socially awkward around it at the beginning. But then this beautiful relationship evolved of almost like this childlike, innocent wonder of exploring these treasures of being present in nature together. So we were really like children running around in nature, like marveling at spider webs and flowers. It was just the cutest thing. It was so beautiful. And I had no clue or intentions or desires about this relationship going into a certain direction. So that was also a really beautiful new discovery of relating with others. But the boy, he he had the wish to join me on the continuation of my journey. And I first didn't know if I wanted that, but then I was like, yeah, why not? Why not? Let's do it. And the next station was the woofing place in southern France, in the Pyrenees. We hitchhiked there together. And this place was not what I had expected. Not at all. So it was more like a Schrebergarten in the mountains. The guy, he really picked out the most beautiful pictures of the surroundings. So on the website, it looked really wild and mountainy and like, wow. But when we arrived there, also in this village, everything was like very square, very like tidy meadows, and it reminded me a bit of back home in the small town. So I was like, this is weird. In the end, it turned out it wasn't really a woofing place anymore. It was just this old dude living there. He didn't grow any food anymore. He offered us this pre-cut lettuce in plastic bags with canned tuna. So coming from Plum Village, where everything was vegan and self-grown and like so delicious, this was quite a culture shock, to say the least. He even had one of these plastic jacuzzis in front of his house where he would hang out with his partner and drink champagne. Or I don't know what they drank. And our job there was to paint their outdoor furniture. So yeah, it was pretty clear that we wouldn't stay there. And we just used it as a base to reorient and decide where we would go from there. And we met this owner of a little grocery shop, and he recommended us a town that supposedly is full of travelers and alternative people. I don't really like that term, but just those people who don't have plastic jacuzzis in their garden and probably grow their own food. And he spoke about this town of like, it's so vivid and the market is so beautiful. It could be a good place to connect with people and to find the next station. So we did that. We hitchhiked to that town, and when we arrived, I remember it was so hot. It was in the middle of the summer by now. I had my period. I had this huge backpack. I was just like so exhausted when we arrived there, and it was not like I had imagined it. I had pictured this romantic French country village. There are these really beautiful villages around, and it was just not that pretty. There were quite some drunks around. There were many people with sparkling, radiant eyes, however, but it was super hot and overwhelming. So many people. I remember my travel company getting really pissed and angry because he didn't trust in the plan. I really took that with me from my first hitchhiking trip with my friend 𝗪𝗰𝗰𝗲, who really implanted this trust in me that you don't need a plan, you just go and the path will unfold. So I was holding on to that. My travel company didn't. And the market got emptier and emptier. And at one point I see this guy, and he looked like a figure out of a fairy tale. He had this big leather backpack with a wooden flute sticking out and a turban, and this huge white dog sitting next to him, and these really vibrant blue eyes. And I just said, this is our guy. This is it. We have to go to him. And so we did. We went to him and asked him of possibilities to sleep around in the area. He recommended us caves. We weren't really excited about that. And then he was like, okay, give me a moment. I call my roommate. And he called his roommate and he said, well, we're living in this house and you're welcome to come with us and stay with us. And I was really surprised. I don't know what I had expected, but this felt really, really like somebody inviting us into their home without even having seen us before. But we were really grateful and tired, and so we walked with him back home. After 30 minutes of walking, we arrived at that house, and I remember this man opening the door, smiling at us, and there was just this immense love radiating out from his eyes. And he looked at us and said, welcome home. And I didn't even know how I felt about it. I was like so surprised and confused, I guess, because this isn't something I've ever experienced before. And, he really meant it. He really meant it. And he invited us in. And we arrive in this living room where there's barely any furniture, just a couple of pillows on the ground, like a low table, a small table. And the rest of the room was just filled with instruments, like so many instruments. I didn't even know half of them. And you could just immediately feel by walking into the space that this is a space of love. This is a special place. And it was so funny also. I was so intimidated by this person because he was wild in the sense of also in his energy. So he also shared with us that he, like myself, was coming from a journey of drugs and addiction, and he just came off from some pretty heavy stuff. So he had changed to coffee and sugar. And wow, yeah, you could feel that in his energy. But at the same time, there was all this love radiating, love for life, and it was just so contagious. So, I still felt comfortable around, but also intimidated. All of it together. And I call him the Rainbow Man. I want to I want to, respect people's privacy because I haven't asked permission to share any names. So let's just go with the Rainbow Man. And that's what he did. He started talking about rainbow family right away. And that he has brothers and sisters all over the world, and wherever he goes, he's welcome there. And that's why we're welcome at his place, because he sees it in our eyes that we're his brother and his sister. And it just felt like I was just really landed in a fairy tale. I was very very confused about what he was talking about. Also, I have to add, he had a very basic English with a heavy French accent, and he learned his English basically on the streets of India. So there were all these Hindu words, I guess, in between that I didn't know, didn't knew. And yeah, it was just this like wild, crazy experience of being like showered in these stories about rainbow family. And yeah, he said, stay as long as you like, take as much food as you need. Welcome. So the Rainbow Man, he took us a bit around in the area and showed us the market and some river places. We went singing together, and it was really beautiful. But his place was in a village, and we were really craving to live on the land again and get into permaculture gardening again, learn about that. And so when we were back at the weird plastic jacuzzi place, we wrote an imaginary letter to the universe with all the points that we wished from a place. And we were walking next to a river and just like dreaming up this place up in the mountains with beautiful trees around that's wild. And I don't remember what we said, but through the Rainbow Man, we got connected with a woman who lived a bit more up in the mountains and who offered roofing. And when we met her on the market, I had goosebumps all over my body. Like, again, it was a person with such radiant eyes. And that is something so touching about the area here. I feel in the city where I come from, and also in Berlin, it's rare to see old people that are really alive and radiant. And here in this area, this is the status quo. Like, it's really common that we have like mixed groups of ages here, and people don't stop participating in the social life. And so meeting her was, impressive and beautiful. And we got into her car and we were driving these roads, turns and turns and turns, and like cliffs coming up, and the nature just got wilder and wilder. And the last path up to her house is just crazy, like this gravel road, like one turn after the other, and you can't like really take the turn in one turn, so you have to do twice. And it was just like, oh my god, where are we going? When we arrived up on the mountain and got out of the car, and I had my first sight around, I was so speechless. I was just in awe for this place. Like, I couldn't believe it. And also seeing her, this moment really felt a bit like meeting my future self. I had shivers all over my body, and I was just standing there looking at these lush green mountains, and there was a spring arriving just in front of the houses, and everywhere were beautiful flowers. And again, it was just one of these places where so much love had been poured in for so many years, and you can just sense that from a place. And I remember looking at the boy, and we just looked at each other, speechless, like, but telling to each other, you notice that all the things we wished for that they became true in this place. Like, yeah, fuck. How did that happen? I don't remember how many weeks we spent at her place, but it was such a wholesome experience. And coming from this, strict frameworks again of the monastery to living on her magical land that's so wild and raw, and we had a bit of more space for our own rhythms, although of course we helped her on the land. But just the effect that nature can have on you, I think there it got really obvious to me, like how the places we immerse ourselves in influence us. And for me, it was just such a wholesome time, and spending this time with the boy and having these hikes and explorations and collecting flowers and being amazed by seeds and insects, and a time of play and just wonder and learning about plants. And my soul and my being just felt so expansive there. And that's where it became clear to me that I would love to live in this kind of way. I would love to live in nature and create the space that I can share with others like this, to experience this, coming home and letting go of all the conditioning and the masks, and just returning to tending to the soil and feeling part of something that's so much bigger than us. And slowly I'm noticing that the love story is probably way too big to fit all of it into one episode. And I think I will leave it at this point and just share with you already that being on a journey like this and falling in love, no matter if it's with nature or a person, it is a journey and it is a honeymoon phase. And there's a difference from being super duper in love and then nourishing a long-term relationship. And this is what the next episode will be about, sharing a bit about the dream versus the reality of living in nature. And well, if you want to hear more of the love story, let me know in the comments, because I like telling love stories and there's still so much more to share. So yeah, if you're enjoying this, let me know. Hello again. If you've liked today's episode, I would love to hear from you. Maybe leave me a comment how you felt while listening to this. Maybe you want to share this video, this episode, with a friend who feels lost or is looking for ways to connect with nature, earth, people. And if you've been enjoying the podcast so far and you can, please donate to our GoFundMe page so I can continue paying my badass single mom editor and the upcoming guests. You find the whole list of topics and guest speakers also on the GoFundMe page. So yeah, any kind of support kind words, feedback is warmly welcome, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Bye.